The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Above, a dome of transparent metal showed the stars beyond Nexus Prime, each point of light representing worlds that bowed to the Council's wisdom. For over 5,000 years, this chamber had been the heart of galactic civilization. Ambassador Sarah Chun walked across that vast floor with steady steps. Her simple black suit looked plain next to the flowing robes, crystalline armor, and energy fields that clothed the other beings in the chamber. Behind her walked 3 other humans, equally quiet, equally unremarkable. The Ethereal Prime, a being of pure light housed in a containment field, spoke first. Its voice echoed like distant thunder. Representatives of the species known as humans, you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your actions. Sarah stopped at the speaking circle. She did not bow, as was tradition. She simply looked up at the towering figures around her. "We're listening," she said. The Zephyrian delegate, a creature that looked like a giant mantis made of living metal, clicked its mandibles. "In the past 50 of your years, your species has established colonies in over 200 star systems. This expansion violates the harmony protocols established by this council. Your terraforming methods destroy existing ecosystems," added the Verdanian representative, whose bark-like skin rustled with indignation. "You burn entire continents to make way for your settlements." Sarah nodded. "We make worlds suitable for human life." "Yes." The crystalline collective's speaker pulsed with angry light. "You have settled in systems that have been traditional territories of 3 council species for millennia. This is theft." "Traditional territories," Sarah repeated. "You mean empty space around planets you never bothered to use?" A wave of shock rippled through the chamber. The council had been dealing with new species for thousands of years, but none had ever spoken so bluntly. The Ethereal Prime's light grew brighter. "Young species, you do not understand. The galaxy has order. We maintain peace through careful management of resources and space. Your reckless expansion threatens this balance." "Reckless," Sarah said. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, sensors, and energy fields of beings that could destroy planets. "Tell me, how many wars has the Council fought in the last 1,000 years?" "Wars are primitive," snapped the Zephyrian. "We resolve disputes through negotiation and compromise." "How many species have gone extinct under Council management?" The chamber fell silent. Finally, the Verdanian spoke. "Extinction is rare. The Devourers of Spiral 7, but they refused all attempts at reform. The Silicon Collective, who would not abandon their planet-eating practices." "The 17 species?" Sarah interrupted. "I've read the records. All because they wouldn't negotiate." The Ethereal Prime's voice carried a hint of confusion. "You see the wisdom in our methods. This is why we offer you the same opportunity. Submit to proper terraforming oversight. Halt your expansion until proper surveys can be completed. Pay compensation to the affected species. These are reasonable demands." Sarah looked up at the being of light. "No." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. In 5,000 years of Council history, no species had ever simply refused a direct order. "You refuse?" The crystalline collective speaker dimmed with shock. "Humanity declines your demands," Sarah said clearly. "We will continue our expansion as planned. Our colonies will remain as they are. We will pay no compensation for settling empty worlds." The chamber erupted. Not in violence. The Council had not seen violence in centuries, but in confusion. Representatives spoke in dozens of languages, their translation devices creating a cascade of overlapping voices. "This is unprecedented." The Verdanian managed. "They cannot simply refuse," insisted the Zephyrian. Ethereal Prime's light pulsed in patterns that suggested deep thought. "Young humans, Perhaps you do not understand the consequences of your words. The Council has ways of enforcing its will. Economic sanctions. Trade blockades. If necessary, we can isolate your species entirely. Sarah smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You assume we need you. Every species needs the Council. The Crystalline Collective protested. Trade networks, technology exchanges, resource sharing. We've been getting along fine without them, Sarah said. We make our own technology. We find our own resources. We trade with species that want to trade freely, not through your bureaucracy. The Zephyrian leaned forward, its metal form scraping against its platform. You are 50 years old as a galactic species. We have guided civilization for millennia. You cannot simply ignore thousands of years of established order. Watch us, Sarah said. She turned to leave, but the ethereal Prime's voice stopped her. If you walk out of this chamber, there will be consequences. The Council has never allowed a species to simply opt out. Sarah looked back. Then you've never met humans before. Your species is not special, the Verdanian said, its voice rising. You are carbon-based life forms like hundreds of others. You have 2 arms, 2 legs, basic intelligence. Basic intelligence, Sarah repeated. Tell me, how long did it take your species to develop faster than light travel? 3,000 years from first civilization, the Verdanian said proudly. The Zephyrians? 2,000 years, the metal being said. The Crystalline Collective? 4,000 years, came the answer. Sarah nodded. We did it in 600 years. From bronze tools to starships. We had our first interstellar war before most species learned to make fire. The chamber fell silent again. This time, the silence was different. It carried the weight of beings realizing they might have miscalculated. Wars are primitive, the Zephyrian said, but its voice was uncertain. Yes, Sarah agreed. We are a primitive species. Remember that. She walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. At the doorway, she paused. The Council has offered us a choice between submission and consequences, she said without turning around. We choose consequences. The door sealed behind the human delegation with a sound like thunder. In the chamber, 47 species that had ruled the galaxy in peace for 5,000 years sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what had just happened. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council faced a species that simply said no. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 3 days after the humans left. The great chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives tried to make sense of what had happened. They simply said no. The Crystalline Collective speaker repeated for the 5th time. In all our histories, no species has ever just refused. The ethereal Prime dimmed its light, a sign of deep thought. We must respond. If we allow one species to ignore Council authority, others may follow. Economic sanctions, suggested the Zephyrian delegate. Cut off all trade with human worlds. They will return to negotiate within a cycle. The Verdanian rustled its bark-like skin. Agreed. No species can survive in isolation. They depend on galactic trade networks like everyone else. The sanctions began immediately. Every species in the Council network stopped all trade with human colonies. Supply ships changed course. Communication relays blocked human signals. The galaxy's largest economic system shut its doors to humanity. The Council waited for the humans to come back. Begging for mercy, they waited for 3 months. On the 91st day, reports began arriving that confused everyone. It confers everyone. Human colonies were not struggling. They were growing faster than before. How is this possible? The ethereal Prime demanded, reading the intelligence reports. They're trading with non-Council species, reported the Altarian observer, a jellyfish-like being that floated in a tank of methane. The rogues of the Outer Rim, independent miners. Even some species we expelled from the Council centuries ago. But those are barely civilized groups, protested the Crystalline Collective. They cannot provide the technology and resources needed for large-scale colonization. The humans are teaching them, the Altarian continued. Human technology, but adapted for other species. The rogues now have faster ships than they've ever built. The miners are pulling metals from asteroids they could never reach before. The Zephyrians' mandibles clicked rapidly. They're creating their own trade network. This is impossible. It takes millennia to build such relationships. Not for humans, apparently, the Altarian said. They're also still expanding. 17 new colonies in the last month alone. The council chamber erupted in concerned chatter. This was not how sanctions were supposed to work. The ethereal prime called for silence. Send negotiators. Cultural experts. Find out what they want. The first diplomatic mission to Earth took 2 weeks to organize. The council sent its best. Professor Zendari of the Mindweavers, who could understand any alien psychology. Ambassador Kellyan of the Silver Tongue species, who had never failed to reach an agreement. And High Analyst Zorf of the Logic Collective, whose reasoning was considered perfect by mathematical standards. They returned to Nexus Prime 3 days after arriving on Earth. Report, demanded the ethereal prime. Professor. Zendari's tentacles writhed with confusion. I cannot read them. Their minds are chaotic. They think in patterns I have never encountered. Impossible, said the Logic Collective's representative. All intelligent life follows basic psychological principles. Not humans, Zendari replied. They hold contradictory ideas simultaneously. They plan for peace while preparing for war. They cooperate and compete at the same time. It makes no sense. Ambassador Kellyan floated sadly in his nutrient tank. I offered them everything. Technology transfers. Preferred trade status. Full council membership with senior standing. They listened politely and said no to everything. But what do they want? The Verdanian demanded. Nothing, Kellyan said. They want nothing from us. They said they would be happy to coexist, but they will not be controlled. High Analyst Zorf's mechanical voice crackled with static. I attempted to show them the logical benefits of council membership. Resource efficiency up 347%. Conflict reduction down 95%. Technological advancement accelerated by, what did they say? The ethereal prime interrupted. They showed me their history, Zorf said. Wars beyond counting. Genocides, plagues, disasters that would destroy most species. And yet they rebuild stronger each time. They said logic is useful, but survival is not logical. The council sat in stunned silence. Finally, the Zephyrian spoke. What are they doing now? Expanding, Zendari said. They're settling systems we marked as too dangerous. Worlds with deadly weather, hostile life forms, unstable stars. They treat these like minor inconveniences. And they're fast, added Kellyan. Faster than our models predicted. They can set up a functional colony in 3 months. Full terraforming in 2 years. We still don't understand how. The ethereal prime pulsed with growing concern. How fast are they expanding? Zorf accessed his data cores. Current rate, 17 colonies per month. Projected rate in 1 year, 30 per month. In 5 years, they will have more worlds than the Crystalline Collective. This cannot continue, the Verdanian declared. They will upset the entire galactic balance. Perhaps, suggested a new voice, we should learn why they refuse to negotiate. All eyes turned to the speaker, Counselor Venth of the Ancient Watchers. Being so old, they remembered the council's founding. She rarely spoke, and when she did, others listened. "Explain," the ethereal prime said. "I have studied their history more carefully than the diplomatic mission," Vance said. Her crystalline form sparkled with age. "Humans have tried negotiation many times, but their species has experienced something we have not, which is complete civilizational collapse. Multiple times. They have learned that when survival is at stake, negotiation can be a trap." The chamber grew cold. The idea of civilizational collapse was almost unthinkable to species that had known millennia of peace and stability. "They believe," Venth continued, "that we will negotiate until they are weak enough to be controlled completely. Their history teaches them that those who do not negotiate from strength do not survive." "But we are not their historical enemies," protested the crystalline collective. "To them," Venth said, "there is no difference. They see any attempt at control as a threat to their species' survival." The Zephyrian leaned forward. "Then, what do we do?" Before anyone could answer, an alarm echoed through the chamber. The Altarian observer was receiving an urgent transmission. "What is it?" The ethereal prime demanded. "Intelligence report from the border systems," the Altarian said, its tentacles pale with shock. "The humans have established colonies in the contested zone." The contested zone was a region of space that 3 council species had been arguing over for decades. It was considered far too dangerous for settlement due to hostile local life forms and unusual stellar activity. "Impossible," the Verdanian said. "Nothing can survive in that region." "The humans can," the Altarian replied. "They have 7 functioning colonies there already, and they're building something else. Something big." The ethereal prime's light flared. "Military installations? We don't know. Our sensors cannot penetrate their defenses." For the first time in the Council's history, a species had expanded into territory that the Council itself feared to enter. Worse, the humans were building secret installations that even Council technology could not observe. "This has gone far enough," the Zephyrian declared. "We must act. What do you propose?" The ethereal prime asked. "A demonstration of force. A blockade of their newest colony. Show them that the Council's authority must be respected." The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. In the end, fear won over caution. The Council voted to send a fleet. Admiral Zaxxon of the Ethereal Navy stared at the tactical display showing Kepler 442b, the newest human colony. 200 Council ships formed a perfect blockade formation around the world. It was the largest fleet assembled in 3 centuries. "Sensors confirm the colony is only 6 months old," reported Lieutenant Vash, a young crystalline officer. "Population approximately 50,000 humans." "Perfect," Zaxxon said. "A new colony will be completely dependent on supply ships. Cut them off for a few weeks, and they will beg us to negotiate." The fleet had traveled for 2 weeks to reach this remote system. Intelligence reports suggested it was a standard human colony. Basic shelters, simple farms, nothing that could threaten a Council fleet. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. She looked young, with dirt on her cheek and calloused hands. Behind her, Zaxxon could see construction equipment and half-built structures. "This is Colony Director Lisa Park," the human said. "Can I help you?" Admiral Zaxxon straightened his energy form. "I am Admiral Zaxxon of the Council Navy. This system is under blockade by order of the Galactic Council. No ships may enter or leave until your government agrees to negotiate." Director Park nodded. "I see. Well, that's your choice, I suppose." Zaxxon waited for fear, panic, or demands to speak with Earth. Instead, the human just looked tired. "You do not seem concerned," Zaxxon said. "Should I be?" Park asked. We have everything we need down here. Food, water, manufacturing, power. We're quite comfortable. Your colony is only 6 months old, Lieutenant Vash interrupted. You cannot possibly be self-sufficient. Park smiled. You might be surprised what humans can build in 6 months when they put their minds to it. The transmission ended. Admiral Zaxxon frowned. Human colonies were supposed to be dependent on supply shipments for years. But he had his orders. The blockade would continue until the humans surrendered. 3 days passed. No ships tried to run the blockade. The human colony continued its normal operations as if 200 warships were not overhead. On the 4th day, things began to go wrong. Admiral, Lieutenant Vash reported, her crystalline form flickering with confusion. Our deep space sensors are detecting anomalies. What kind of anomalies? Unknown contacts, moving toward our position from multiple directions. Zaxxon studied the tactical display. Small blips appeared at the edge of sensor range, approaching from 6 different vectors. How many? He asked. Difficult to determine. The signatures are strange. They're not showing up clearly on our instruments. Merchant ships trying to run the blockade, Zaxxon decided. Intercept and turn them away. 2 squadrons of Council fighters launched toward the approaching contacts. The pilots reported normal patrol conditions right up until they vanished from sensors. Squadron 7. Report. The communications officer called dot silence. Squadron 12. Please respond. More silence. Admiral, Lieutenant Vash's voice was rising. We've lost contact with both squadrons, and the anomalous contacts are still approaching. Zaxxon felt the first stirrings of concern. Launch a full reconnaissance wing. I want to know what happened to our pilots. The reconnaissance ships had advanced sensors and stronger defenses. They should have been able to handle any threat in this remote system. They lasted 17 minutes. This is impossible, Zaxxon muttered. What could destroy our fighters so quickly? The answer came when the unknown contacts reached visual range. Admiral, the sensor officer called out. You need to see this. The main screen showed space around the planet. Council ships held their blockade positions in perfect formation. And surrounding all of them were human vessels, not just a few ships. Hundreds of them. Where did they come from? Zaxxon demanded. Unknown, the sensor officer replied. They weren't there 15 minutes ago. The human ships were unlike anything in Council databases. They were smaller than Council vessels, but packed with weapons and armor. More importantly, they moved in perfect coordination, like a single organism with hundreds of parts. Admiral, the communications officer reported. We're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel. A new face appeared on screen. This human was older, with gray hair and scars that spoke of violence. Behind him, Zaxxon could see what looked like a military command center. I am Fleet Captain Marcus Webb, the human said. You are trespassing in human space. This system is not claimed by any council member, Zaxxon replied, trying to maintain authority despite the growing knot in his energy core. We have every right to be here. You have the right to travel through this system, Webb agreed. You do not have the right to blockade our colony. The Galactic Council has authorized this action to enforce. The Galactic Council has no authority over humanity, Webb interrupted. We've made that clear. Zaxxon looked at his tactical display. The human ships had surrounded his fleet completely. Worse, the display was showing weapon locks from every human vessel. Captain Webb, Zaxxon said carefully, you are outnumbered. We have 200 ships to your. He paused, reading the count again. 436 ships. 438, Webb corrected. 2 more just jumped in. That's impossible, Lieutenant Vash whispered. Where were they hiding? Webb smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, did your intelligence reports mention what kind of colonists we sent to Kepler 442b? Standard civilian population, Zaxxon replied automatically. 50,000 military veterans, Webb said. Combat engineers. Defensive specialists. People who have spent their lives learning how to turn empty ground into fortresses. The tactical display updated. What Zaxxon had thought were construction projects on the planet's surface were revealing themselves as weapons platforms. The farms were actually sensor arrays. The power plants were shield generators. You turned your entire colony into a military base, Zaxxon realized. We turned our colony into a home worth defending, Webb corrected. There's a difference. This is a trap. This is what happens when you threaten humans, Webb said. We don't negotiate from a position of weakness. We don't surrender when faced with superior numbers. We fight smarter. Admiral Zaxxon looked at his fleet. 200 of the Council's finest ships, surrounded by an enemy that had appeared from nowhere. His weapons could destroy the human fleet, but not before they destroyed his own. What do you want? He asked. For you to leave, Webb said simply, and to take a message back to your council. What message? You assumed we were naive because we're new to space. You assumed we were weak because we're small. You assumed we would negotiate because everyone always does. Webb leaned forward. You assumed wrong on every count. The human captain gestured, and every human ship powered up its weapons simultaneously. The tactical display lit up with targeting locks. We're not going to destroy your fleet, Webb continued. We're going to disable it. Every ship. Then we're going to send you home with a story about how 400 human vessels defeated 200 council ships without losing a single one. You cannot be serious, Zaxxon said. Admiral, humanity has fought wars where we faced odds of 10 to 1 and won. We've survived genocides that should have ended our species. We've rebuilt civilization from ruins so many times that we've gotten good at it. Webb's expression hardened. A fleet of 200 ships is not the worst thing we've faced this year. Lieutenant Vash looked at her instruments in growing panic. Admiral, they're using some kind of jamming technology. Our communications are being blocked. Our weapon systems are being targeted by viruses. The lights went out on the flagship. Emergency power restored them a moment later, but the damage was done. Across the fleet, council ships were going dark one by one. How? Zaxxon whispered. While your species spent millennia learning how to live in peace, Webb said, mine spent that same time learning how to break things. We're very good at it. Admiral Zaxxon's fleet hung dead in space, weapons offline, engines disabled, communications jammed. Not destroyed, but helpless. Around them, human ships maintained perfect formation, their weapons still active, still targeting anything that moved. The blockade is over, Webb announced. You will leave this system immediately. Our ships are disabled, Zaxxon protested. Your engines are fine. Your life support is fine. Your navigation is fine. Your weapons and communications will stay offline until you're 50 light years away. One by one, council ships began limping away from Kepler 442b. The mighty fleet that had come to enforce the galaxy's will was retreating in shame. As Admiral, Zaxxon's flagship finally cleared the system. He sent one last transmission to the human colony. This is not over, he said. Director Park appeared on screen again, still dusty from her construction work. Captain Webb tells me you're leaving, she said. Travel safe. Your species has made a terrible mistake, Zaxxon continued. The Council will not tolerate this humiliation. Park tilted her head. Admiral, can I ask you something? What? In all your histories and all your wars and conflicts, have you ever fought a species that wanted to lose? Zaxxon frowned. No species wants to lose. No, Park agreed. But most species fight to avoid losing. Humans fight to win. There's a difference. The transmission ended. Admiral Zaxxon stared at empty space and wondered what his fleet had really encountered above Kepler 442b. Behind him, Lieutenant Vash was reading intelligence reports that should have been impossible. The emergency council session had been running for 6 days without pause. Representatives floated, stood, or hovered in various states of exhaustion and panic. The humiliation at Kepler 442b had shattered everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. "We must understand them," the ethereal prime insisted, its light flickering with stress. "A species does not become this militaristic without reason." Councilor Vent of the Ancient Watchers had been silent through most of the debate. Now she spoke. "I request permission to mount an archaeological expedition to Earth." Archaeology? The Zephyrian delegate clicked. "We need military intelligence, not ancient history." "History explains the present," Vent replied. "If we want to understand why humans refuse negotiation, we must understand what made them this way." The crystalline collective pulsed with impatience. "We know their history. Wars, conflicts, territorial disputes. Every young species goes through this phase. Do they?" Vent asked. "Show me another species that colonizes at their speed. Show me another species that can build an industrial shipyard in 6 months. Show me another species that fields 400 warships without anyone noticing." The chamber fell silent. When presented that way, humanity's achievements seemed impossible. "Permission granted," the ethereal prime said. "But take security. If humans are this dangerous, their homeworld may be trapped." 3 days later, the research vessel Eternal Seeker reached Earth's solar system. Professor Cathara, the galaxy's leading archaeological expert, stood on the bridge studying sensor readings from humanity's birth world. "Curious," she muttered. "What is it?" "Ask Commander Zell of the escort squadron." "The planet's surface. I'm reading geological patterns that don't make sense." "Mass extinctions, yes, but also rebuilding, over and over again. Natural disasters?" "Some, but others." Kithara adjusted her instruments. "Commander, I need to examine their archaeological record. This planet has been through something unprecedented." The team landed at an abandoned research facility in what humans called Antarctica. The facility was buried under ice, but their sensors indicated vast archives beneath the surface. What they found changed everything. Professor called Dr. Yinks, an insectoid researcher. "You need to see this." The archives stretched for kilometers underground. Crystalline storage matrices held the complete history of human civilization. But it wasn't one history. It was 47 different histories. "Impossible," Kithara whispered. Reading the data flows. The records showed civilization after civilization, rising on Earth, each one more advanced than the last, each one ending in total destruction. "The first civilization developed agriculture 12,000 years ago," Dr. Yinks reported. "Advanced to basic metallurgy. Ended in a plague that killed 90% of all humans. The seventh civilization achieved powered flight. Ended in a nuclear war. The 15th civilization reached their moon. Ended when their star went unstable. The 23rd civilization achieved faster than light travel. Ended when..." Dr. Yinks paused, mandibles clicking with confusion. "When what?" Kithara demanded. "When something came from outside the galaxy. The records call it the Great Devouring." Professor Kithara felt ice forming in her biomechanical heart. "Show me." The holographic display filled with images that should have been impossible. Vast ships larger than moons. Swarms of creatures that consumed entire star systems. A force of destruction that swept through local space, leaving nothing behind. The humans fought them? Commander Zell asked. "The humans ran," Dr. Yinks corrected. Their 23rd civilization evacuated Earth completely. The records show they scattered across a dozen galaxies, hoping to preserve their species. Then how are there humans here now? The survivors came back. After the Devourers left, they returned to Earth and started over. Civilization number 24. Kithara was studying the timeline. How long between civilizations? Usually a few hundred years. Sometimes a few thousand. But each time, they rebuilt faster. They learned from previous mistakes. And the current human civilization is number 47, Dr. Yink said quietly. The research team stared at the implications. Humans hadn't just survived one apocalypse. They had survived 46 of them. Professor, Commander Zell said slowly, if they've rebuilt civilization 47 times, what are they rebuilding from? The answer came from deeper in the archives. Hidden in the most protected vaults were records of the previous 20 civilizations. Each one had been more advanced than anything the Council had ever achieved. Technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Ships that traveled between dimensions. Weapons that could destroy stars. And each time, when the end came, the survivors had deliberately destroyed most of their own technology before fleeing. They're holding back, Kithara realized. The humans we know, the ones building colonies and refusing to negotiate. They're not showing us their real capabilities. Why would they limit themselves? Because they've learned that advanced technology attracts attention from things like the Devourers. Dr. Yinks was accessing more recent records. Professor, look at this. The current human civilization has been monitoring deep space for decades. They have detection networks we never imagined. Monitoring for what? The return of the Devourers. Commander Zell laughed nervously. That's impossible. Something that destructive would have wiped out the entire galaxy by now. Unless, Kithara said slowly, they don't stay in one place long. Unless they move between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. The final archive chamber contained humanity's greatest secret. Star charts showing the path of destruction across multiple galaxies. Each one stripped of life before the Devourers moved on to the next. And the charts showed something that made every member of the research team want to flee immediately. They're coming back. Dr. Yinks whispered. The display showed the current position of the Devourer fleet. They were 3 galaxies away, consuming everything in the Magellatic complex. Their projected course would bring them to the Milky Way in less than 50 years. The humans know, Kithara said. That's why they're expanding so fast. They're not conquering territory. They're spreading their species across as many worlds as possible. Survival protocol, Commander Zell realized. If the Devourers hit one system, others might survive. It's more than that. Kithara was reading tactical assessments that hurt her mind to contemplate. They're building a defense network. Every human colony is positioned to monitor deep space approaches. Every world is being fortified. Against something that destroyed their civilization 23 times? Against something they hope to defeat this time. Kithara found the final files. They've learned something new. The Devourers have a weakness. The research team spent hours studying humanity's analysis of their greatest enemy. The conclusions were terrifying and hopeful at the same time. They can be stopped, Dr. Yinks reported. But it requires coordinated defense across an entire galaxy. Every species working together. Every world prepared to fight. And the humans have been trying to prepare the galaxy without telling anyone what they're preparing for, Kithara said. Commander Zell was studying the tactical projections. According to this, we have 43 years before the Devourers reach our galaxy. The humans estimate they need 50 years to prepare adequate defenses. 7 years short. Unless they can get the Council species to help. The research team looked at each other with growing understanding. They weren't refusing to negotiate, Kithara said. They were trying to force us to take them seriously. A species that just says, we need to prepare for war, sounds paranoid, Dr. Yinks added. But a species that defeats a council fleet gets attention. They've been trying to save us, Commander Zell realized. And we've been treating them like the threat. Professor Kithara began copying the essential files. We need to return to the council immediately. What do we tell them? The truth. That humanity isn't our enemy. They're our only hope. As the research team prepared to leave Earth, Dr. Yinks made one final discovery. Professor, there's a message here. Addressed to whoever finds these records. Play it. A human face appeared on the display. He looked tired, like someone who had seen too much. If you're reading this, it means you've discovered our secret. You know about the Devourers. You know they're coming back. The human paused. You probably think we're paranoid. Maybe we are, but we've died 46 times learning how to survive. We'd rather be paranoid and alive than trusting and extinct. We've been preparing for this fight for 50 years. We've spread across the galaxy not to conquer, but to endure. We've built weapons and defenses that violate every peace treaty we've ever signed. We've done all this because someone has to. If your people want to survive what's coming, we need to work together. Not as the Council and humanity, but as the living versus the dead. Because that's what the Devourers bring. Death to everything. We've been waiting for you to understand. Now you do. The question is, will you help us save the galaxy, or will you keep arguing about territorial rights while everything burns? The message ended. Professor Kithara stared at the empty screen. How long to reach Nexus Prime? 4 days at maximum speed, Commander Zell replied. Make it 3. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen anything like it. For the first time in 5,000 years, every representative sat in complete silence. Professor Kithara's report lay before them like a death sentence, written in cold facts that the ethereal prime's light had dimmed to barely a whisper. 47 civilizations, it said quietly. They've died and been reborn 47 times. And something is coming that destroyed them 23 times before, added the Crystalline Collective. Its facets reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting. Counselor Venth spoke into the silence. We need to contact the humans immediately. Contact them how? The Zephyrian delegate demanded. We just sent a fleet to blockade their colony. They humiliated our entire navy. Then we apologize, the Verdanian said simply. And we ask for their help. The chamber erupted in protests, but the ethereal prime's voice cut through the noise. Send a message to Earth. Request immediate diplomatic contact. Priority Alpha. 3 hours later, Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly the same as when she had walked out of the chamber weeks ago, but now the council saw her differently. They were no longer looking at a stubborn diplomat. They were looking at someone whose species had survived the end of the world 46 times. Council representatives, Sarah said politely. I understand you wanted to speak with us. The ethereal prime struggled to find words. Ambassador Chan, we have discovered the truth about your species' history. Which truth? Sarah asked. We have several. The Devourers, Professor Kithara said, stepping forward. We found your archives on Earth. We know about the 47 civilizations. We know what's coming. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. I see. And what do you plan to do with this information? Help, the ethereal prime said simply. We want to help you prepare. Help us? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 months ago, you demanded that we stop expanding, submit to your authority, and pay reparations. Now you want to help? We didn't understand, The Crystalline Collective protested. You never told us about the threat. Would you have believed us? Sarah asked. If we had said, hello, we're humanity. We've survived multiple apocalypses, and there's a galaxy-eating force coming this way. Would you have taken us seriously? The chamber fell silent. The answer was obvious. Instead, Sarah continued, we did what we always do. We prepared. We spread out. We built defenses. We got stronger. And we waited for you to realize that the galaxy needs us more than we need you. But now you do need us, the Verdanian said hopefully. Do we? Sarah asked. Let me explain something about human civilization number 47. We've been preparing for this fight for 83 years, not 50. We've built a defense network you can't detect. We've developed weapons that would terrify you. We've created technologies that we keep secret because they're too dangerous to share. She paused, looking directly at each representative. We can fight the Devourers alone. We've run the calculations. We have a 37% chance of stopping them without any help from the Council. 37%? The Ethereal Prime whispered. That's better odds than we've ever had before, Sarah said. Usually, we just run and hope some of us survive. This time, we might actually win. But with our help, the odds would be better, Professor Cathar said. Yes, Sarah agreed. With full Council cooperation, we estimate 74% chance of victory. With partial cooperation, maybe 58%. Then why haven't you asked for our help? Sarah smiled, and this time there was humor in it. Dark humor, but humor nonetheless. Because you would have tried to negotiate with the Devourers. The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several representatives started to protest, but Sarah continued. The Council's first response to any threat is diplomacy. You would have sent ambassadors. You would have tried to find common ground. You would have offered them empty systems if they agreed to leave populated ones alone. A voice hardened. The Devourers don't negotiate. They consume. Every minute spent trying to talk to them is a minute closer to extinction. But surely some kind of communication, the Ethereal Prime began. We tried that in Civilization 31, Sarah interrupted. The Devourers responded by consuming our entire diplomatic fleet. In Civilization 35, we offered them half our territory. They took it and then consumed the rest anyway. She leaned forward. The only language the Devourers understand is force. Overwhelming, absolute force, applied without hesitation or mercy. That's why we refuse to negotiate. Because we know the difference between an enemy you can talk to and an enemy you can only fight. Commander Zell spoke up from the research team. Ambassador, we've seen your defensive preparations. They're impressive. But according to our analysis, even with all your colonies and weapons, you're still outnumbered thousands to 1. Yes, Sarah agreed. That's why we needed to get your attention. By humiliating our fleet? By proving we were worth listening to. The Council has spent millennia learning how to talk. We've spent the same time learning how to fight. If we're going to survive what's coming, we need both skills. The Zephyrian delegate clicked forward. What do you need from us? Everything, Sarah said simply. Every ship, every weapon, every world turned into a fortress. Every species contributing their unique abilities to a unified defense. Under human command? The Crystalline Collective asked suspiciously. Under competent command, Sarah corrected. Which, for this type of warfare, means human command. We've done this before. You haven't. But the Council has procedures. The Council has procedures for maintaining peace, Sarah interrupted. We need procedures for winning wars. There's a difference. The Ethereal Prime pulsed with troubled light. You're asking us to abandon everything we've built. 5,000 years of peace and cooperation. I'm asking you to use everything you've built to win a war, Sarah replied. Your manufacturing capabilities, your resource networks, your scientific knowledge, your population centers that can be turned into fortress worlds. And after the war? Assuming we win? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. After the war, you can go back to your negotiations and your territorial disputes and your careful diplomatic protocols. We'll go back to our expansion and our preparations for the next threat. The next threat? Professor Githara asked. There's always a next threat, Sarah said. The universe is vast and dangerous. The Devourers won't be the last existential challenge this galaxy faces. But that's a problem for later generations. You're asking us to trust you with the survival of every species in the galaxy, the Verdanian said. No, Sarah replied. I'm asking you to trust yourselves. Trust your own scientists to develop better weapons. Trust your own engineers to build stronger defenses. Trust your own people to fight for their homes. She paused. We'll just coordinate the effort. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. Species that had never agreed on anything argued about strategy, command structure, resource allocation, and acceptable losses. The humans waited patiently while the Council tried to apply diplomatic solutions to military problems. Finally, Council events stood. I call for a vote. Full cooperation with human defense plans, yes or no? The vote was 38-9 in favor. Amendment, the Zephyrian delegate added. All species maintain sovereignty over their home systems. Accepted, Sarah said. As long as you understand that sovereign systems that can't defend themselves will be evacuated. Amendment, the Crystalline Collective said. Council maintains oversight of resource allocation. Rejected, Sarah replied. War doesn't wait for committee meetings. Then how do we ensure fair distribution of... You don't, Sarah interrupted. You trust us to win, or you lose everything arguing about it. The final agreement took 3 more days to negotiate. In the end, the Council learned to do something it had never done before. Compromise quickly. 6 months later, the first joint Human Council fortress worlds were operational. Zephyrian manufacturing techniques combined with human tactical doctrine. Crystalline defensive technologies merged with Verdanian biological weapons. Ethereal energy manipulation focused through human, strategic planning. The galaxy was becoming something it had never been before, unified, on Earth. In the rebuilt archives beneath Antarctica, Sarah Chung stood before a memorial wall listing all 46 previous human civilizations. Each one represented billions of lives lost, worlds abandoned, knowledge sacrificed. This time will be different, she said quietly to the names carved in crystal. This time, we're not running. Above her head, display showed the positions of 17,000 council ships taking positions along the galaxy's edge. Behind them, 10,000 human vessels moved in perfect coordination, carrying weapons that had never been tested in battle, but had been designed by minds that understood lost dot at the very edge of space. Automated monitoring stations detected the first Devourer scouts entering the galaxy. The final war for the Milky Way was about to begin. But for the first time in 47 attempts, humanity wasn't facing it alone, and for the first time in 5,000 years, the Galactic Council was united not by negotiation, but by necessity. In the depths of space, Sarah Chun's final message was transmitted to every world in the galaxy. This is what we've been preparing for.